the stairway behind the toilet.
Yeah. Most of us.
Okay, this is good, something to correct that. Which I, of course, also say very much on purpose to show you the effect of very small anecdotes. If you want to liven up your stories immediately, without even doing anything with structures or whatever, try to put little anecdotes, these personal, small details, like I almost got lost in the stairway on my way to the toilet, because as you can see, there will be recognition, there will be some laughter, people are more engaged again. And that can be scary, because that means that you have to trust that what you have to tell is actually enough. That my anecdote of almost getting lost in the stairway while searching for a toilet is actually interesting information to use, instead of thinking, well, of course, I cannot tell people that it's not interesting. Please do, because every anecdote that you have to share with us, everything that made you smile a little bit, will most definitely also make somebody else smile. So use as many anecdotes in your stories as you possibly can. That will be my introduction for the second part. I sent you into the break with an assignment. Oh, right. Yeah, okay. But there is almost always someone, at least, who says, I will give it a go. Let me try this out. So is there somebody who has an example story for us? Something you would like to work on? For instance, when you walk out of here, you say, I want to try to make this into a story. Now's the time I can help. I will, if we have enough time, also can we go to.
Okay.
What was your name again?
I'm Eren.
Eren.
Yes, shall I start?
Just start, give me everything first, and then afterwards we'll worry about this. Let's first hear it.
Okay, so some of you may know that I am working with blind children. I'm their choral conductor. And at the same time we have this another group who are deaf children. So we are trying to manage them to come together and make music together, but at the same time there's this little obstacle that these two groups of people doesn't have the tool to communicate. So one group cannot hear, one group cannot see. So when you think about it, these are the really fundamental tools of communication. So we were thinking about how to make them communicate. So music was our language actually, because the deaf children were actually feeling the rhythms from the bass. No, not instruments, but like the
big boxes, the speakers.
Yeah, speakers, bass speakers. So it was the rhythm, and then they felt it from their feet. At the same time, we have this volunteer group that helped our blind children, and they were together like this. Yes. So they could actually hear the beat at the same time, but when there was this solo performance, they were doing like this, and it was helpful for them to have some seeing friends. So another way of them to communicate was my blind children wanted to clap them, to congratulate them, because they are doing this hard job, but they can't hear it. And they do this, it doesn't mean anything to them, so it doesn't happen. So I tried to let them know that in their own language, in the deaf language, clap means this. So I told them, please do your hands like you are crazy. This is the Turk. Maybe it's just a Turkish gesture, but it's like he's crazy or something. So they said, okay, shall we do like this? Shall we do like this? Because they don't have any examples in their minds. So I actually had to. Can I use you? I actually went and worked with my children, person by person, and just made their hand like this and turn it like this, and then they understand it. So I have like 14 blind children. Thank you so much. And they did it like that. So when I said, okay, we are clapping for our deaf friends, and they did like this. Their eyes are closed, and they did like this. So when the deaf children see this example, they know that we clap like this, but they don't use it because it doesn't mean anything for them, but it means something for blind children, so they just clap like that. So we had this communication that doesn't make any sense to ourselves, but to the others. So we had this little sparkle of communication between them, with this just little gesture, but it meant so much to them, to both groups, and at the same time to the audience, because there were like 300 people watching our concert, and half of them were doing like this, the half of them were doing like this, and then they changed parts, etc. Everybody has their own responsibilities, etc. So this just little gesture made everybody so excited and emotional, and we felt really nice about it, and I just wanted to share this with all of you, because we're all from the choral music scene. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So beautiful material to work with. Also, this was extraordinary, touching information, and it was still information, which makes me very happy because then I have actually something to do. Because now we want to turn this into an actual story, structure. And for that to happen, I could, by the way, maybe people who are a little bit further in storytelling, you can make easily 4, 5, or 6 stories out of everything that has just been said. If you recognize that, then 10 points for you, your storytelling radars are working. It's good. So, but you recognize this, right? You say, I'm going to tell this one story, and then a lot of things come out, and then halfway through you think, what is actually the story I am telling? I am giving the information of what happened, and then what's the story? So, when working with the structure to build up the story, we're going to split it, turn it around. So I'm going to start with asking myself, what is the point of this story? Why do you want to tell, in this case, us, but later on you go through all the questions, right? What story, why, to who should tell it? But for now, let's practice with to us. What is your point? What would you want to?
Something that we don't recognize because of our abilities doesn't mean that other disabled children can't. I know my English is going down. No. Something not important for us may actually be very important for children that
essential.
are. Yeah, essential to some disabled children.
This is a magnificent point. Something we don't recognize or is not important to us might be very important.
And you're a great storyteller because I didn't say that much. That was what I was thinking, but I couldn't say that. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
This is what I heard.
I just couldn't manage to structure the book.
But this is my job, so this is why I am.
Thank you so much.
So, sometimes when I ask people what's the point of the story, people say, well, I want to make the point why singing is important. And then I say, okay, so what's your point? Because telling me that you want to let me know why it is important to sing is not the same as letting me know why singing is important. So then you need to ask yourself deeper questions. And what is the answer to that? And that's the thing you write down. So for yourself, you decide, with this story I want to convey why singing is important. Okay, so why is singing important? Well, in this case, because it makes me feel happy. And then you go like, but that's not enough. It needs to be more, because I have to convince people that singing is important. And as soon as you do that, you have to stop yourself, because then you are going back into your own blue brain, and then you start to convince people. Blue brain to blue brain. It doesn't work anymore. So you're going to have to trust a little bit that something tiny and simple as saying something that's not important to me might be very important to somebody else. That touches people so deeply in their limbic system that they become engaged to want to know more of this. So if you tell me one small but touching story about how singing makes you happy, and you show me, right, in this structure, you give me the setting, you walk me through what happened, you show me, then I feel it too. And that makes me engaged to want to hear more from you. And then you tell me another story, and you tell me another story. And before you know it, you don't have to convince me of anything, because I'm right there. So, beautiful point, well made. Here we go. So if we know this, then what is the absolute important information to give in our really part? What are the actual events that contribute to saying, so you see, something that's not important to me might mean more for somebody else? What is it that we absolutely need to know as non?
These two groups of children wanted to communicate to each other, and even if it seems impossible, it was possible for them because they.
So we have the wish, the desire.
Yeah.
We want to not even just communicate. Communicate's a bit vague, because the topic is specifically about the applause. So we narrow it even more down, make it more the image in my mind. They wanted to communicate. I cannot see that. Do they want to talk? Or do they want to show each other something? Do they want to... I cannot see it. So it's still too vague. So then you ask yourself, what do they want to communicate? What's the image? Oh yeah, that is the applauding. That's...
Yes, but the main part was, I believe, congratulating each other.
Congratulating each other. So they wanted to congratulate each other. Well, that's something I can see. I immediately have an image of somebody congratulating somebody else. Really good. So we have a wish, we have a desire, we have clearly an obstacle. The one part can hear the other, and the others can see it's an obstacle. You already gave us all of this, of course. So what is it then that we need to know if it is specifically about congratulating each other? Which event do you want to take me to in the story?
Okay. So,
Which moment explains to me?
Okay. The moment that my children clapped and the deaf children didn't hear it. That was the moment.
Okay. The children clapped, and the deaf children didn't hear it. It meant nothing to them. Because if my point is going to be about it might mean something to them, I have to introduce a little bit earlier the problem. This is the answer to it. Remember, the wish and the desire needs to be answered in the end by the result. The princess is lonely, so in the end they get married. So if I end with, and then they got married, I have to introduce somewhere she was lonely. So this is in direct relation to each other. So here I have to introduce, sometimes it can even be with the same words. You might think, oh, that's too obvious. It is not for your reader, their index is it will not. It meant nothing to them. Which also means that I already know that I have to end here with, now that meant something to them. So I'm narrowing everything down. If you have questions, ask them, right? Okay. Before we fill in this part, because that's actually quite easy after this, what is then the first setting of the scene? Which moment do you want to take as really the first sentence of this story? Where are we? What am I witnessing with you?
We have this different kind of choir that brings together some unexpected groups of children.
Can we see this immediately? Everybody's a little shy to answer. No, the answer is no. We cannot see it. This is why I'm very grateful that you want to help us show this. Sometimes it's very, it can be a little bit intimidating to be the one on the spot. So thank you very much for letting us work with this material. And I'm kind of a stern teacher, so then I say, no, that's wrong. But then everybody understands it. So yes, we want to show them that, but we can show them that. Because I don't immediately see different groups that we want to bring together. I'm still searching for what am I looking at then. So can you take me maybe to the moment right before this happened? Just right before.
Okay. So we were rehearsing for the first time.
Okay. It was the first rehearsal
that we had.
And then we're going to immediately introduce also the character, because who are the characters? in this sense,
and blind
the
children.
deaf children, blind children, and you.
And me.
Right? And you're the teller of the story, so the story will be in the I form. So, the first rehearsal. It was the first rehearsal I had with my deaf choir and blind. Now, these were kids from around Istanbul,
I just changed a lot. From 5 to 17.
from 5 to 17. Now the image is building up in my mind. So I all put this in the setting. It was the first rehearsal I had with two beautiful and extraordinary choirs. These were kids from Istanbul, aged 5 to 17. Now in itself, that's not so extraordinary. But one of the choirs was blind, the other choir was deaf.
And
So take me by the hand and introduce all these elements to me as if you are talking maybe even like you would in a children's book or in a fairy tale. It helps, it works. Sorry.
so, for example, what I don't see yet is were they singing for each other or with each other? So, what was the rehearsal for? Were you planning a concert with the two choirs? Were you planning a common performance of the two choirs to understand where the applause came in?
And we know that we have to fill that in because this was our introduction and then all of a sudden the children clapped. So something there is missing. And this is exactly what Sonja asked you. So what were you doing then? How were you positioned? What was it for? Did you, etc. So
Okay, so we have been rehearsing separately for 2 months, and that was the last month that we had a concert in a big classical music festival.
perfect. I'm going to give you another challenge. You are the teller of the story. So I would like to, this is what we do, we are models. We talk about we. The choir and you, your members and you, your team and you, your team. We say we. I can work with we because I start to question who exactly is we. How many people is it? So more powerful is to keep it in I and to say I have been rehearsing with these two choirs or these choirs have been rehearsing with me for the last 2 months. Yes.
Is it also nice to start with we and then continue with we?
I would advise not to.
That's why I was just...
Yeah. Sometimes you want in the end to make a point and that's why you should give me money. That's why you should give me funding. So in the end, the you comes into play. If that's the message you want to use to sell, it's a legitimate reason to tell a story. But then in the end, you're introducing the you. Then what you do is in the beginning, you always begin with I, because that's very safe for the people who are going to give you money. Then in the middle part, you introduce a we. And you take them along from your experience into what is happening with the we. And then naturally, in the end, you can say, and that's why you are going to give me money, because they were right there with you. Thinking, oh, you had an experience and it touched several people, and of course now I want to contribute. I need you. Very simple. Does that help?
Does it help?
Does it help? Does it help?
Well, I'm just thinking, it helps, but still, maybe I need some more. But I understand, of course.
Yeah. Also, it's about the different, there might be a story that you choose to tell for a certain target audience about a certain topic that will absolutely work with just we. Oh, we. Depends on the context of the story.
Yeah.
But for this particular story, I would most definitely start with I, because it is your experience that you are telling to. So, hit me from the beginning. Just walk me through the story.
Okay, it was the first rehearsal I had with my, okay.
Yes.
Not the story. Okay, it was the first rehearsal that me and my deaf children were rehearsing with, blind children rehearsing with their own instructor and themselves. No.
So we could even say, there I was rehearsing with my deaf choir.
Yes, but
An hour later, the blind choir walked in.
Okay, deaf choir is not my choir, blind choir is my choir. Okay. Okay, that was the first time that they come together, let's say. I had to explain my own choir, what they were doing, and what actually is the deaf languages. So I explained them, and they partially understand what I said, And then even they didn't see anything or felt anything from their neighbors, because they're blind, they just wanted to congratulate them. The children, yes.
On what?
On the performance that we are doing.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
So then you have to tell us a little bit, and then the deaf audience, they performed something beautiful. My children were really touched, and now they wanted to congratulate them.
Okay, so the deaf children were actually doing some choreography with their hands. If I should stand up. The deaf children were actually doing this choreography with their hands according to the rhythm and the tempo. So I just explained this to my choir, blind choir, and then they wanted to clap them because they know how hard it is to do stuff like that. They sympathize themselves with the other choir.
Because now...
Shall I?
Yeah, continue please.
Okay, so when they realized this point, the children clapped the deaf, and then they understand that they actually realize that they can't hear it. So they asked us what to do, and I explained them how to clap in deaf language. So again, they couldn't imagine it, and they couldn't do it. So I just practiced them how to do it one by one. And then they did, and the deaf children saw this. After seeing this, they wanted to clap like this, even if it doesn't mean anything, it didn't mean anything to them.
So we are right. And there's one thing that now you are going to just bring it home for us, because now we are seeing these children doing this gesture for the other ones. And what is the thing we now just need to hear, even though we know it, we need to hear it. What is it?
They were very happy.
Yes! We need the result. We need now. Show me why the image that you created in my mind mattered. So these kids were standing there. Why did it matter? Because you saw the emotion, the result. You know, the prince marrying. We know that he's going to marry her after the dragon has been defeated. We need to hear it. So give us a beautiful ending.
Okay. Both parts of the group were actually really happy because it was the first time that they encountered this kind of experience. So they were really happy.
And the good news is, we have already written down the point. So now we can say
they were really happy.
Yes.
Because that meant something to them. No.
It's even easier. You can say, and that is one of those moments that taught me in working with these children that sometimes the smallest things that don't mean anything to me can mean the world to someone else. It was already there.
Yeah.
And this is why you always start with formulating this one sharp point, because you can come back to it while you are making words. So far so good? Maybe an applause? Because this was beautiful. So, do you think that you could work on a story of your own, or shall we do one more like this? For practice. Yes?
Could you show how to present some event, for example, in a story? How should we create the story if it's difficult?
Well, did you bring, I'm also looking at Masis, maybe what you wanted to bring in as a relation to this, or?
I don't know, I can tell.
What was it you wanted to work? Let's just.
Yeah, so shall I tell?
Yes, and then we will decide if we can maybe answer some of your personal questions.
Okay.
Before you start, if you think, no, I got it, I want to now practice because I feel how I can build my own story, go do so. Right? Don't feel obliged to stay with us if you now want to just practice something for yourself. Okay.
So it was 8 years ago, in the concert hall of the university. I was sitting with my 40 young singers after our concert. I remember the desperate faces of them, because we were trying to participate in a choir competition in Austria, and there was only 1 month and a half, but we basically had no money. So
we love these kinds of settings. We love the setting where we already know that they're going to go in the end, but still we are desperate with them. We are terrified. How come to so nice.
So suddenly one of us came up with the idea, let's produce a video. And we said, well, let's try. Next Saturday, we went outside and we sang for a whole day, starting from, the very central places in the city, and sang spontaneously everywhere for maybe 10 hours. And then the day finished. One of us were shooting our videos. The next day, I was having lunch with friends, and suddenly I saw myself and the people on Facebook. I saw that he just immediately prepared the video and uploaded on YouTube. And the next hours we saw that it became to be like shared more and more. It became viral. The next day and the next day it became like 50,000, 100,000 views on YouTube. And then we gained finally some attraction to find a sponsor for this competition. But at the same time we had one more obstacle we had some procedural difficulties with the university, so we had to leave our rehearsal place.
I'm going to interrupt you here because you're telling such a wonderful story. I want to keep it as wonderful as it is. Because exactly.
I
you felt it, right?
Yeah.
I saw it happening. So
I did before.
So what we're going to do is first we're going to round up this first story. You have to. Because when you said that finally we attracted a sponsor that gave us money, it was like saying he defeated the dragon and all was well. We need to know what. And then this one person who was in charge of a lot of money was scrolling Facebook. And what did he see? A video of some choir singing for 10 hours in the city. And he was intrigued. So he picked up the phone and he called this guy named Masis. He said, I saw your face in the video. And this is extraordinary. It touched me deeply. How can I transfer you the money? And then we will burst into applause. Yes! There the money is. Right? You can't just say, and that's how we attracted a sponsor and he gave it.
I just tried to make it shorter so not to make it, normally I tell too much.
But this is exactly, I think, recognizable for a lot of people. This is what we want to do. And then say, yeah, but there was of course more to it. So I'm going to just give you a bit of this, and a bit of this, and a bit of this. And what you're now experiencing for yourselves is that for an audience that doesn't work. So much more powerful is to round up this one story, put it out into the world, and then the next day said, you remember that story of yesterday about the singing for 10 hours in the rain? Well, there was a little bit more to it. And then you continue.
Okay. So now I come back to
and then basically you start all over again.
But shall I continue from the point?
Yes, so chronologically, in terms of the information, you continue where you left off. But in terms of story structure, you're going to give me a new setting. You were already going to do that. But there was also something. And that's a new setting where you start again. So chronologically, from your point of view as providing all the information, you just move on in the story. But for your audience, you start a whole new story. To be aware. Does that make sense? Yeah, good. Okay, continue.
Shall I give the details how we found the sponsor or the next one?
Whoa, let's see what you think is most suitable for a sweep us away, with what you're going to say.
So after this video went viral, we had a lot of calls from TV channels, newspapers, and we were just running from one live show to the other. And at the end, well, we found somebody who wanted to support us, and that was a really good thing. But what is more, we had one more crisis. We had to leave our rehearsal place, so that was not finished yet. So we had to find another place. We called some friends, and finally we found a place to rehearse for 1 month. And actually we rehearsed every day, almost every day. And finally we finished all the things and we went to the challenge. And then we won 2 categories. And then people were crying while the award ceremony was going. So it was.
This is the point where I was just thinking, what was my point again with this story? What was the exact point I was making again? Because I know I'm going somewhere with this, and this is why it's so important to write this down first.
Yeah.
To have it ready in your mind. This is the point I'm making.
Is it correct to say that the whole championship is actually a third story? The whole, because you have
Of course, but in the second story, because now you are afraid that you are taking up too much time and you don't want to talk, so you start to shorten the story. For us, you would have to. We would love to hear, well, there was the second crisis, we had to leave our rehearsal space. So here I was, with how many singers?
40 singers.
40 singers. 40 singers out on the streets. Now we had the money, we had no place to rehearse. Now what? Well, we already know what's going to happen. We know they find a place to rehearse. We know they're going to go. We know they're going to win. You know? We know this, but we still want to know. What are you doing with these 40 singers out on the street? Well, we called and we called and we called, and then you start to say things like, and finally we found a rehearsal space, which is just to sort of be rid of the subject. The word finally, I don't ever want to hear it in a story ever again. And after 355 phone calls, finally somebody said, then you can say finally. After 300, finally somebody said, you can use my space. Oh. So in we went. Now we had a month left, so what did we do? We rehearsed every single day. We were as prepared as we could be for that competition. And then we went in. Now you can't stop there, because then you have your audience engaged, thinking, why doesn't he tell me the next? So the next day they will be engaged. And you start story number 3. So we arrived, and then you start all over again with a new setting. There we go, on the airport, or wherever you step out of the bus. Do we get the principle of this? Thank you so much for this demonstration. Beautiful. Okay.
Yvette, may I ask something?
Yes, can we first clap for Mrs.
What I see while you're telling the story,
Yeah.
there's a lot of non-verbal expression in it, what convinces even more.
Yeah, of course. This is why I would also always advise, and I was going to touch upon it anyway after Gerhard's contribution also, because we also want to show you that you can enhance every story by being crossed in the type of storytelling you use, the type of platform you use. So if you can, this is why I put up a picture of a yew tree in the beginning. Just one picture of a yew tree, but it does something. So if you can support your story with video, because then people see you tell the story, great, do it. If you can support it with audio, like Sonja's story, where she actually played us the audio of that radio fragment, do it. If you can support it with overviews of statistics, do it. If you can support it, etc., etc. But you don't have to, and that's the beauty of it. My hope is that when you walk out this door, you will have a new framework to start telling your story in your way, with this in mind. And it will most probably be different than what you've been doing before. It will have a different effect. Yes? Does that answer your question? Great. I want to come back to you for a little bit. Or was it answered in the meantime?
During this weekend, I find ideas.
And I hoped that that would happen, because if you ask how can we promote a festival, the first thing you do is you stop making it about the festival. Because then you come into your blue brain thinking I have to tell everything about this festival. Instead, go back 5 minutes ago. How did you feel 5 minutes ago about your own festival? Well, I was telling this person about what we are doing there, and I'm so excited for this particular part. Aha, that's a story. So let me take you to the coffee break of the storytelling workshop in Slovenia. There I was. And somebody asked me, what are you up to? And I thought, well, actually, this just happened in the preparation of our festival. We have booked this and this workshop host, or this and this artist, or this and this. And, you know, for me, that means so much because emotion. So I was telling this other person about it, and they said, oh, I really have to come. And that's when I realized, oh yeah, our program is really good, and this is really what's going to make people come to the festival. You put it out there you go.
And I was thinking another way also, who are characters of the event? Can I tell story from that side?
Can I maybe already find somebody? Perfect. Perfect. Yeah. Helpful?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yes. Beautiful. So what I would like you to do, just a short exercise. 32 hours to work on storytelling, but to for yourself, think of the story that you thought of in break, or maybe it changed during this exercise. It can very well be. And try to very shortly, just like we did here, choose one point and be bold in choosing your point, because you can make 10 points to every story. You really can. Just choose one. That's also the fun of storytelling. You can choose one, and the next day you can choose another, and the next day you can choose another. So choose one point you want to make, write it down. Give me a short setting, short meaning leading to your point. And if you have any trouble doing so, I am now free for 5 minutes, so I can walk around and help. And also help each other in the groups if you can. Keep it short. And 5 minutes of practice. There was a question. Martin.
Hi. I just asked myself, we are improving stories now.
Yeah.
And will you also give an input maybe of how creating a story? Because sometimes I just have a simple fact like I have a festival or I have a singing week for people and I want to advertise that and I need a story or something that
Who can help Martin right now? Who says I have an idea?
I thought it could have been your question.
Who has an idea? So he has this festival. What do you do first? Let's talk about the process. What do you do first?
You think on who you're telling the story to.
Yes. The questions at the beginning. So, why are you going to tell a story about this festival at this moment? Why?
Because I want people to bring to sing.
Okay.
Or to my festival, I don't know.
Okay, so you want to tell the story to get participants to come to your festival?
Yes.
Good. Then who is the story for?
For the participants.
For the participants. Which makes a lot of difference if this story would be for journalists or it's specifically for participants who can come. Okay. So what do you need to tell them about your festival that will actually get them there? One thing. Because you can name 100.
What the advantage is.
Okay, now answer that question. What is the advantage then? This is a beautiful example of thinking of the point. The point I'm going to make was the advantages. Okay, now answer that for me, please. What is the advantage?
To be a life experience.
A real life experience. Which one?
Unforgettable moments with friends.
An unforgettable moment with a friend. Or with friends. An unforgettable moment. We want to make it as real as possible. So I'm going to tell a story about a festival where you will experience an unforgettable moment with friends. Wow. Well, take me then to, and that's why at this festival you will experience an unforgettable moment with friends. Where does this story need to start? Who has an idea?
In the past.
In the past. And
Maybe an old experience.
do you have an experience of your own maybe where a festival provided that for you?
Yes, of course, but
There's nothing
about it, yes.
Nothing, of course, about in this setting, because that's exactly the pitfall. You think, yeah, of course, but your future participants, there's nothing, of course, for them about it. So this is your goal. Your own experience is your actual goal. So give me one. And here is the fun of storytelling. You can randomly pick one and randomly pick another as well. Give me one moment where you were at a festival that provided to you a life-changing moment. Friends.
Sitting at the fire on the river, singing out of booklet.
And immediately we are there, right? So.
Yes.
I will have some good stories of my own to tell. Okay. I don't know what this is, but it's not ours. Oh, yours? What have you been doing? Okay. So, this setting. Talk me through the sitting by the river, etc. Give me the setup. Because we know the point is that to me was a life-changing experience, and that's what you will get at this festival. That is the point. So, talk to me, Martin. What your second. And speak in the eye, as if I know. Let me take you back to when I was sitting there in the
It was back in 2016 when I was at this great festival in a very hot area of southern Europe. And it was so hot the whole day. And in the night, I mean, we were all tired, and as it always is, you are with so many people the whole time, and your brain is like that.
I'm going to immediately give you a challenge because you're natural at this. He goes fantastic, you can hear it. And so I'm going to challenge you to keep it in the eye only, no we's and you's. You are sweaty the whole time, we were all tired. No. I remember it was so hot, it was bloody hot. I was sweating, literally sweating the entire time. I still feel the sweat on my back when I think of that. So keep it in your experience, just eye. Yeah, go.
Okay. And I was sweating and a little tired in a way, but then a friend said, well, let's go down to the river because I heard some other friends will be there, and don't miss this opportunity. And I never regretted that moment because we went down there the whole night. I had my mobile phone, the light from the mobile phone was the only guiding light through the forest that came first. Then went down there, and there were some people from, I don't even remember, France and I think Italy, and they were singing a local folk tune I know already because I was singing that with my own choir, and I got there and immediately started to sing with them, and maybe you know how it is, you just join the circle, and
we don't know how it is. You don't know how it is. No, I'm a future participant. I have no idea. Let me tell you how it is. This is what you're doing.
But I thought maybe it's a singer. I'm talking to a singer who I want to convince to come to my festival.
Yes, but if he already knows how it is, he doesn't have to come to your festival. Because he already has had the life-changing experience.
True.
So, you guys, I am telling you, you have stories within your own repertoire that are gold for the rest of the world to hear. So do not assume that it is a logical thing or that other people already know that they have the same experience. Trust that your own experiences are important, really important. So tell us
maybe
about how
you can imagine that you come to this circle and you are something like in a family, you're part of the circle, and you get a beer, and you're close to everybody in a very special way. And there were not only young people, there were older people, but age didn't make any difference because the thing that connected us was music.
And keep telling me, I need a little bit more of emotion. How did that make you feel in that moment? This is all beautiful. Now I need to hear how did you feel.
I was tired. I was very tired. And I came there, and suddenly, I don't know, it was like a very sparkling moment because the atmosphere was filled with energy and alcohol, of course.
I really don't dare to flip back. Yes, thank you. So now we already know where it's going to end. That was him having a life-changing moment with friends. So work through that point. And that's why it was life-changing for me. And that's what we're going to get. Then go.
And that was 3 years ago. And this very special moment there was like the starting point for me to say, I want to be the one who brings something like that to my own city, in my own country, and I want to share this moment, this experience with the people in my environment and in my community. And now the end. With my community, and that's why I'm so dedicated to share it with the people. And
now don't be afraid. I'm going to put on a little bit of my business hat. Do not be afraid to tell people that they should come. And this is why you have to become. Get out of the modesty of wanting to share. I'm very stern, I know this. anecdotes. But
That's why I want to say, and the only thing I need now is people are willing to share this experience with me.
Beautiful. And then say that has to be you, because I know that if you're reading this, this is for you. Really, address your audience. Ask them to come. If you don't ask them, they will not come. Because then they will say, oh, you need those people. Great. Oh, wait, me. You mean me? We think it's logical for the audience. To them it isn't. But what an incredible story, and what beautiful anecdotes you started to add. And how personal it became when you said that was the moment that you went to the sharing. It was magnificent, was it not? Maybe we can applaud Martin. Does this answer a little bit the question on how do I find the stories? If I say, okay, I want to promote something, now what? Does this, I mean, I could go more into this for hours and hours and hours, but my hopes is that at least some kind of shift has taken place within you, so that you start thinking about these things differently. And if you really panic and you say, I'm completely stuck, then call me, and I will do the same now. Remember when I said, talk me through the ending, what did it mean to you? Give me emotion. And then you said, well, I was tired. Remember? And we all laughed. That is because he was absolutely right in introducing an obstacle. We hadn't heard it yet. So far, he just immediately agreed to come to the river, and it was beautiful, and it was all great, if he would have said, and it touched me, and life-changing. The goal of this story, the golden moment, was the moment that he said, well, actually, I was so tired. And then you think, uh-oh, does it mean that the experience gets what now? That was so beautifully done, and it needed to be. Perfect.
What if a story isn't completely positive? What if, for instance, the prince lost an arm? I mean, how do you turn that into something that's still positive and gives a good ending?
Does it need to be?
I don't know. Like if you can't, or you lose part of the funding, so you can't make the festival as big as it is.
What would be your point with that story? If you would tell me that time that you lost half the festival budget, what's the point?
If you want to say, well, next time,
Please give me money this time.
please give me money this time.
Yeah. So then your point is, and you're going to have to be precise in your formulation, but your point is going to be, that is what happens when we lose half of our fundings, and that is the reason why we need it this time.
So unfortunately, you can't come to this festival and have this life-changing experience. Well, I'm Lutheran, so I'm used to sad stories. That's what I
As long as you are clear on what is the point I'm making with this story, you can go as dramatic as you would like. You love it. Oh yeah. Does that answer your question? It's going to take practice, obviously. It's not. This has been something I've been doing for years now. Just forgive yourself if you're not immediately having all the stories at the. As long as you feel that you have some new tools and some shifts on how you look towards this topic, and maybe even some courage or bravery to become as vulnerable as we have already heard some of our friends do today. I'm going to go to one more question, and then I'm going to move on in our program, because otherwise I'm 5 o'clock. Yes.
What about certain stories not from your eyes, but somebody's stories?
Of course.
Just you should start about you met the person and
Give me an
he told
example.
me.
Do you have an example?
I met one woman and she told me the story. Is it okay?
Beautiful. It's actually precisely what Sonja is going to do right now. She is going to not be the main character of the story herself, which is a good thing, because there's going to be a little Q&A at the end, so don't worry if you have questions. I'll come back. This was my smooth going on to the next part of the program. But if Sonja would have been the main character of this story, we would have been worried. Sonja was in fact...
Sounds like a great autobiography.
Yes.
I've been thinking for the last 10 minutes, how am I going to tell this story by saying I know how.
Yes, it can be as simple as saying, I met this woman, and this is what she told me. Then you are the teller, but not the main character.
So actually, my story is that I was in Lebanon for the first Lebanese International Choral Festival,
and we have a member choir there called Fajra Choir, and one evening after the concert we went to the pub, and then suddenly one of the singers started talking and telling us the story of his life. And the basic message he told was, singing stopped me from being a terrorist. And he told us some points from his biography, which led me to say to the Fajra Choir, you're trying to tell the world why your choir is so important and great. You should just use this story of Mahmoud, and you don't have to say much more, because that's the strongest way you can show what your choir stands for. And Mahmoud did this, so he wrote his story, and I'm not going to read the whole story to you, but I will post it with this workshop later. But just to tell you two or three paragraphs from it. So this young man says, with free time on my hand, after his first part of studies, I started to meet all kinds of people. It was then when I came across a person whose name I won't mention, with whom a formation of young men was made. Maybe you would call it a gang. I was 24 years old and the problems in Tripoli had begun. I was in charge of physically training these young men as I was in the army. Our gang got support from an outside source and we became active in chaos which occurred in the Bab el-Tibene and Jabal Musa crisis. In our minds, we were protecting our territory from real-life threat. Today, I know this was wrong. And then he tells that he heard about this concert, and he goes to this concert. As the concert started, a man wearing a black penguin suit, apparently a conductor, asked a crowd of almost 2,000 people to put their mobiles on silent. I snorted. Is this man serious? But from the moment he raised his hands, it was like magic. I remained for the entire concert. As the audience began to shuffle out slowly, I claimed an empty seat close to the stage. As I got closer and closer to the choir, I noticed that I knew one of the girls singing, Mayada. So he went home and asked this girl, should I join the choir? And he did. He went to rehearsal and he writes, and so I, a gang member, hard-headed, ill-tempered, 24 years old with no degree, tested my vocal range for the first time. The man whom everybody called Maestro told me I was a talented bass. A bass? What's a bass? Mayada laughed. Great, it means you're a man. Sit over there. But Maestro had other plans. He placed me in between other basses and told me to sing directly. Eventually, my gang days began to simmer away in order to give my all for the choir. My temperament improved and I became more peaceful. Maestro had challenged me now. Either I learned all the songs in 1 month or I risked being kicked out of the choir. And so I worked, day and night. By the end of the month I was ready and I was changed. Then the last part I will read is, I've been in the choir for 5 years and I noticed that the topics which my old friends talk about haven't evolved one bit. I'm no longer interested in the shallow things we used to discuss religiously. You only talk about cars, work, women, Sunni, Shiite, who cares? So, as I said, the story is longer, but I think it's a wonderful example how you can, because we're asking who can tell your story. So in this case, the conductor doesn't have to tell the story, he just lets one of the singers tell the story and use it to promote his choir. Maybe to say one last thing, because what is maybe special about this choir, it's a choir that is a multi-religious choir in Lebanon, so they have Christian and Muslim singers from a lot of different sub-religions, and Tripoli is a city that had to suffer quite a lot from different religious problems, actually not between Christians and Muslims, but among Muslims, and that's where this young man came from. I think that's beautiful enough.
And also, thank you, Sonja. I immediately want to ask, yeah, you can say or said it's all okay. Just not go into the content, but did you recognize now already more of the things you have heard previously in this workshop? I mean, oh, this is why it works. Good, good. Another thing that I hope that is now maybe different for you, when you heard Sonja tell this last part about what is special about this choir, is that it has this and this and this, that's information. We would tend, if we were the one who had to promote this choir, to tell those things. It is special because this and this and this, we would try to convince people. But you have felt the effect now of this story instead. And what will happen after reading the story? What is the first thing you think? There's no wrong answers. What was the first thing that came up with you after hearing this story? Maybe nothing because you're also beautiful.
How powerful this choir was to be able to change, or the experience of the choir was to be able to change a young person so radically.
Yeah.
That was my first reaction.
What kind of choir is this? And then we would Google the choir, and then we would find the information. It's not necessary for us to tell, but we sometimes still think that it is. And I really want to encourage you today to take a chance on your own stories and the stories of the people you can involve in this, and let the story speak for you, and trust that your audience can then find the information for themselves. They believe. So far so good? Okay. I would like to invite Gerhard to bring us something.
Thanks to Sonja and Yvette for this start. So my impulse is a little bit an excursus to a different medal of the same thing, but I have to say, in listening to this wonderful thinking about stories, I think there's interesting things. The thing is for us, or for you as a choir leader, it has a lot to do with communication and education, of course, and all those things. And I think also it's interesting one aspect which is always relevant if you speak about research, that you have to focus a little bit more. You cannot solve all the problems with one thing. You have to focus on main spots, and I think it's really helpful. One thing is interesting, even if you speak about the linearity of stories, I think we have to be aware that the thinking is quite open and multidimensional. So even if in the end we have a linear story, the field where we're working is quite open. So we have, and I think we should keep this a little bit in mind. So the question, what I was now, I was jumping over. Yes, the question was, sorry, it was the slide before. How can you measure and turn this into stories? So I would say that scientific perspective would sound like this: evaluation and presentation. So time is a little shorter. I think for 50 minutes behind time. I will keep it a little bit short. And perhaps you can take pulses, and we can have after talks in the cave and so on. So we have more time later. If you think, if you think of evaluation, that is just a word cloud. You see, you can think what comes into your mind if you think about evaluation. Which words are they on there? Yeah. What are you missing?
Analyze.
Analyze. Yes, I think it's over there. Yeah.
Surveys.
Yeah. And more.
Surveys. Surveys, questionnaires.
Yeah.
Collection of information.
Yeah.
One. Future.
Yeah. Future strategy. Yeah. There are many things. If we look on the perspective of challenge or obstacles or chances, so we have also those two dimensions. There are many difficult things in there, but there are also a lot of chances. I will try to bring it a little down. If you think about evaluation, you can say there's a big switch in the last year. So just last week I had a colleague from North Texas University, the dean of the music college there, and he told me in the USA, since 20 years they shift the system totally. So your salary, for instance, is depending on the student's evaluation. So this is not in Germany the case, but we are also more and more related to this situation that we have to deal with this necessity to evaluate on all levels. I think if you have, I'm not sure if the UK people are there, so in English-speaking countries they have a long edition on this evaluation, with all the problematic and positive things in there. So I think we have also a lot of research, so I think we can speak 32 days at least about the research going on. So we have to be aware about these different traditions in evaluation. But if you think about the Bologna process, I think most of you have heard that you more and more at the universities, you all the time have to evaluate your courses. You have to see how does the teachers, the students feel, the systems, and I think more and more this goes also to the school level and to the other settings. So there is an importance also in our daily life. If you go to a hotel or drive with a taxi, you all the time have this evaluation thing going on. Sometimes helpful, sometimes it's inflation that you think, bah, I get a long questionnaire from a train which has been too late and I need another 20 minutes to give them feedbacks. No, so just with Sonja, same experience. So this is an interesting thing. But in the end, we have no alternative. So I think we have to know that evaluation is necessary, and in some sense what we did was a lot of thinking, evaluation of our stories. How can we change them? So we have to go with this situation, but we have to be aware about the challenges and difficulties. So I will give you an example later, but I think the most important thing is if you speak about evaluation, to keep in mind a circle. So if we act, we have a choir, we lead a choir rehearsal, we observe. Whoever observes this interesting question, is it me observing my work on my own? We call this in research, there's quite new section called action research, where I'm researching my own work. This is quite interesting because sometimes we had this situation where only outside researchers going into those situations and they tell you what is right and what not. But it changed a little bit also in education, that the teachers on their own try to reflect. I teach one lesson, afterwards I check what worked well, what not. And the change in the thinking is that I'm more conscious. So after a rehearsal, a choir rehearsal, I start to write. I start to think. I take time for this. It's not coming from alone. So you need time and energy to think what. Or I have a conversation with my choir singers. I think all of you do this from time to time. Say, what did you like? The question is, how can you make this more efficient? How can you work on this? And there are, of course, a lot of answers from research, but this perhaps I take one thing before. In the end, it's very important that you find your own ways to manage this in your practice. And another thing is, if you stop evaluation on the point of reflection, that's a total misunderstanding. Because the only sense of evaluation is that you want to change things. So in the end, you have to take those things into account, and then you try to make a new plan and a new action. This is most time a problem of evaluation. If you make an evaluation with your choir association, or we have this also in other associations, we say we just ask everyone. And if the membership is not aware that this leads to a real new action, why should I do this? Why should I spend my time in this? So I would really recommend, if you make evaluation, think always, where is space where I really can change things, and then I focus my energy in these aspects. So I collected these hints. So I would say, start your evaluation, not evaluate everything, but what is the story? What do you want to look on? Focus on small things. Sometimes think of your target group. If you think of, if you speak about, in the end, I want to tell a story about the quality of my work. It's a different, of course, if you want to tell this to teachers, policy makers, TV station, whatever. So think always what could be interesting for them. There are some topics which are, at the moment, we are a lot confronted with integration, inclusion, social things. So at the moment, I would say this is an interesting issue where you can take more energy on. So it's a little bit question of strategy also. Another thing is, if you start evaluation once more, think always, what can I really afford? So sometimes it's good to think what could happen and how can I react. So efficiency is important. If you make any interviews or questionnaires, try to make them as short as possible. So this is really, it's nothing new, but I think it's good to be aware of this time which all the people who answer your evaluation, for instance, have to take, and take this really serious, this responsibility for their timeline. So if we have this, I don't want to go too deep because of time, but we have all those circles. If you plan evaluation, the problem in all those things is that this takes, of course, some professional energy. And in my general hint would be, if you have a chance, look for corporations, because everywhere you have universities, you have colleagues who can support you. Think about what is the role of the evaluator. Do you need a person outside? Sometimes it's really good to have a person from outside, a coach, because you are in your association or in your choir or wherever. Sometimes you're a little bit trapped and you don't have the thoughts of things which a person from outside immediately recognizes. So I can go there and see, oh, why did you never think about this or this? I think, oh yeah, you're right. So this is quite important to have this outside perspective, not always try to solve everything from inside your association. If we would have time, I think it would be interesting to think that everyone thinks now in what way, first we take the time for one thing. Have now a short thinking about and communicate what are you planning or what would be interesting for you to evaluate. And combine this with the question, what could be the aim? Why can you evaluate this? So I give you just 3 minutes so that you think about this.
Maybe it could be already connected to a story that before Gerhard's part had in mind. I would, for instance, Martin, I would like to get people to come to this festival. Okay, what kind of data can I collect? What can I start evaluating that would support my stories of come to this, for instance? Yes, but that's just an extra challenge for the ones who do it.
Okay, I think you can do this in a group. Yeah. Okay, I like the clubs. But you need more time. But you can really quickly collect what came up in your group. So the question is, what could you evaluate and why? Yeah, can you start? Okay.
Well, we were first thinking of acquired association, obviously. So the thing that you could evaluate is the things that if there's a difference between what you offer as an association and what your members want or expect from you. And right next to it, what your potential members would want or expect from you, because they're not necessarily the same conclusions.
So those are big questions. Then you have to develop a kind of design. We need some time to work out. But I think this would really be interesting, so that we have different models. In the end, the questions will be similar in some groups. So if you have some strategies, this is the question, and you can also take over to another. If you have a questionnaire or a procedure or interview, whatever, you can take over and use this. So we do this in music universities. We started up a network of 22 universities in Germany. One develops a tool for this question, the other for the other, and we can use each other. We have to adapt. But of course it's also a lot of work, interesting thing. Yeah, what else? Okay, next group, yeah.
Yeah, we were just discussing more about what to evaluate in her storytelling before. And was it efficient the way she used to satisfy the need of the children to congratulate? What proportion of children did or did not? How to improve the next time she faced the same situation so that the percentage increased? This is what that can be done.
Very interesting questions. Did you have any contact with research colleagues or about?
Actually, we are working with the psychology department from Istanbul. Right. So after the project, after the concert, the project is not over. They just asked me some specific questions about how the reaction, how the children reacted towards this project, and what difficulties did I have during that process, etc. So yes, they evaluated some emotional stuff, not like statistical things or staging problems, etc. But like emotional or psychology-wise, let's say.
I can just give you the recommendation. If you have a project where you have those kind of combination with researchers, don't leave them alone to make the stories in the end. Go with them hand in hand and try which kind of story can you take out and present tomorrow. Because there's always a big gap between practitioners, research and how to transport. So I think it's really important to connect and force them a little bit so that you can understand each other's needs.
Yeah.
That's really, and from the beginning it's good to have this in mind. Yeah, thank you. Another group, yeah.
Okay, we are a group where we are thinking of youth involvement. As we talked already.
Very loud, please.
I'm trying. So the aim of our theoretical story will be to make people get more young people involved and for young people to be involved. So we are going to evaluate the youth involvement in our association which exists already. So we will ask them and collect information and then we put into a story maybe some story of how it worked well and spread the story to make people want to do it. What was the question?
Yeah. Then sometimes the problem is if you want to reach a new group or we find out why are they not participating, how can you make research on the group or reach where you don't know. So in general, this is the difference. I will speak quickly about the questionnaires or interview possibilities. So I think we have to be clear in the method what you try to really meet your needs. I give just one slide later. Yeah, but interesting. In general, it's always good. I can tell you that you try to have a kind of pilot. If you plan anything to investigate or you make a questionnaire, it's more complicated to do a good questionnaire or a good interview. So it's always good to make a pilot, a test. So you try it with some, it's not, that's quite logical. So if you do a first thing, just try it. Don't bring a questionnaire and put it to thousands of singers, but try it and test it and have this communication in between. Yeah, on the room.
Okay, so we were talking not about a specific event, but more of the whole process in itself. I would say so from what you talked about and you talked about to kind of put it together and see how important it is to keep evaluating so that you have an idea. Also, I was kind of putting it onto my story that I had in my head, that I have an idea and I have a first run through and then in my head the story, then I evaluate it from what I've just learned, then again from that point evaluate it again, and so every single time new ideas, it gets more and more precise.
Yeah,
and,
yeah. So this is the circle of understanding.
Yeah.
So if you do the same thing twice, it's not the same.
No.
Because you started with the knowing already, and if you do it the third time, so this is a circle of change. Perhaps for the choir association, I would say one thing what is really important, what we also realize more and more, even if you research the whole membership or whatever, in the end, every single choir rehearsal or every situation should be of high quality. So sometimes we lose a little bit this most important things that on the basic you have to work. So if you find solutions to support your choir singers to make a better situation, or they analyze their rehearsal. If you have we tried a lot with systems where we sent one teacher to another teacher, and they give this kind of feedbacks. And this was on a lower level, but it was very realistic. And it reached a lot of changes in the mind and in the teaching or in how they did it. So sometimes we think too big. So it's really good to think to bring it a little bit down sometimes and try what can you really manage. Yeah. Thank you. There's two groups. Yeah.
We were talking three relations. One of them was the same as the first group, how to attract members and what to do about it. The second one was about events. If there are some events which members participate both and didn't participate others, and events look the same. why. And the third one was even more interesting. It was about if members began to participate in not usual for them event, why?
Yeah, good question. So a lot of stories in there also. Because of time, I jump now over a question what is always how to measure. Of course, to measure is to know is too easy, you know? Measure is not knowing. So I want to just, we have always, of course I'm measuring a lot as a researcher, but I really, sorry, I jumped this a little bit over. Just, if you want to measure, you always think, what do I really find out with a question? I have a question. Do you also think that the benefit of collective singing, creative performing is important? If this is a question, and I will answer this, you have problems, what do I learn with the answers? So, just be always clear about the questions you ask. What do all understand of the term? Do all understand what do you mean with creative performing? Is there a suggestion in this question where I say, isn't it right that? So, isn't choir singing so important? Yes, we are really clear about this, but are we really neutral in approaching? So this is really interesting to be aware, and also think also about the answer possibilities. So it's always good to have, of course, more than one possibility to answer yes, no. For just a small thing, if you make a questionnaire, it's also important that you ask questions which are answered in a different way. This is from a statistic point important that not all say yes. It doesn't help. If you have questions, all have the same opinion. So it should be questions which separates the group you ask. And so on, so this is a big thing. But in general, I again think of the hypothesis. What do you think is the question? What is the aim? Why do you ask this? This helps always. I jump also a little bit over just to see one thing that what I said already. There are some tools. We use a lot. I'm not in favor to make advertising for Google, of course, but this Google form, if you do evaluation on a low level, is really a nice tool, I must say, must confess. So you can do this for an event. It's really, you can learn this in half an hour, every one of you. So it's very easy to access without costs. So this could be a tool to start with. But I would really say, look for corporations. I'm here also all the time. If you have any ideas, you have no idea how to manage, we can bring together you and the university of your place, or, you know, many students have to write a master thesis. Why not working on choir questions? Oh, sorry, it's lost. Okay, yeah, okay. So, and what I said already, involve external persons. I come to the end, I jump over this presentation thing, which is also a huge. We heard a lot about stories. I would just to tell you that those stories are also difficult. If we read in the English newspaper the 10 worst schools of England, so this story is difficult. Or we have also been critical. What is behind? So this is the other side of the stories. So I'm also thinking what I'm telling about the story and what I'm telling not. And the thing we leave out is also quite important. So I have another example. If you speak about Pisa, there is no music in the whole Pisa thing. But we take Pisa as an evaluation for our whole education system. Why? Why do we not say there's no music, there's no sport, there's no... so Pisa is not doing what is supposed to be. So it does not say about our education system. Yeah?
So a very short point, you might remember the Singing Europe initiative we had at the European Council session a few years. One of the aims was to produce data before somebody else does it about choral music, because then you control the narrative. And they got a figure, 37 million that you can Google, and then nobody will do this research anymore, and end up, because there are questions we don't like, or agree with, with another figure, another point of view. So it's worth investing in your own evaluation and share it, because then nobody will evaluate your stuff is not afraid.
Yeah. So this is what we need data. We need to do more research on choir thinking, and this is what we try to get to start. So we need to do more. We need this kind of data, of course. So I come to an end. Yeah, I told already. So So this is quite important if you want to start in your own thing. Think about your story. I think what is really strong also, if you have reflections, you say, I have this experience in my choir associations. I think you can, this is a valuable thing. This is a reflection you do on different, whatever. You make an analysis and tell your story, and I hand over, because of time, I'm a little bit quicker now, Yvette. So thanks for your attention, and I think very helpful.
I think I don't have to add much more, but maybe to ask, do you see how much you can control in your story and the impact you can make with your stories and the addition of data in there? Sonja provided me with this beautiful statistic. Beautiful statistic. Yes, I will tell everybody, because that is my job to tell everybody, story is more important than statistics. But in fact, statistic can do so much to give an extra layer to your story, to support it, to make it so much stronger. So if you have the opportunity to connect your data, your measurements, your statistics, your evaluations in the form of actual statistics or maybe quotes or whatever it is that you collect to your stories, to give it a backbone, please do so, because you can make an incredible difference. I don't think I have to say much more about it.
I want to say 2 things about knitting, because...
Okay, is it okay if I give Sonja the word first?
I just want to, actually it's Com who discovered the statistic, that's why he wants to say something about it, but I want to say one more thing. I think what I learned through Singing Europe also is to use visualization to turn your statistics into kind of stories or settings.
Yes.
If you say the figure 37 million, people can't do much with it, so Com did like this is the sum of the population of this and this in the city, or if we all hold hands it would be a chain from the North Pole to the South Pole, and suddenly this figure becomes a story. So that's why I think we make the mistake thinking that figures are not sexy, but we can actually make them sexy by the way we use them.
Yeah, so again the importance of creating the image in people's minds with what you say. Do not say the numbers because people get lost in numbers, I cannot see it. I can see this means something to me, and I can speak an image like Sonja just described. We make hand in hand and then we go around the world, right?
And talking about bullshitting and lying for a good aim. Actually, it was a Facebook post that said in the majority of European countries there are more regular house singers than registered soccer players. So the rank is registered. Once, in a majority of countries, actually there are more, if you put the figures in Europe, more registered soccer players. But if you split them, you can say in a majority of countries, and people get, oh, there are more choral singers than football players. So you trick them, it's a mind trick. So they get the information you want them to read.
And of course, Gerhard and me, we ended up in a beautiful discussion about ethics around this whole subject. You know, what's this? We're not going to go into that now because my answer to Gerhard was mostly, I trust the people I work with. I speak for myself, I know who I am. I know that when I use certain data to support a story, what I am doing it for. And it is, of course, not a secret that everybody in the world who ever had some impact used stories to their advantage, either for good or less good. We all know the examples. But, well, that was going a little bit into a subject that was a bit much for here and now. We are still talking about your beautiful work and the effects that you know that it has. So, well, enough said.
May I say one sentence? It's quite interesting.
What? Yes.
Those personal things are quite strong. If you say, I realize these personal effects in my surrounding, and that's really true, because you experienced it, and you don't have to lie.
Exactly. This is why for this workshop, we really chose to focus on how can you start bringing in your stories in this kind of small way, in this structure like we have seen Martin do, like we have seen in different examples to bring in. I think enough for this. Because it takes practice, it's like going to the gym. You don't bench press 100 kilos immediately, you build it up. So give yourself time and space to build it up. I wish you